you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Welcome back to the Throne of the Dragon podcast, the show that covers each and every episode of HBO's House of the Dragon, and in the off-season, we cover every chapter of Fire and Blood. I'm Josh.
And I'm Curtis. It's the off season.
And we're back for off-season.
Hey, we're back. Did you miss us? Probably not. Maybe they did. I don't know.
And hopefully you are all caught up on House of the Dragon at this point. We're not going to be really talking about anything from that, so it doesn't really matter one way or the other. Because in the off season, Curtis, we are going to be covering every chapter of Fire and Blood, which is the story of the Targaryens, all the way up through what we're seeing in Fire and Blood. Are you ready to get into this? You ready to jump on in? There's a lot here.
Dive on in.
Yeah, are you ready to dive on into this?
Dive on in.
So we're going to be going back before even Aegon lands in, or before Aegon comes to Westeros.
Okay.
What do
Where's
you
he at?
let me start with this. What do you know about Aegon the Conqueror, Curtis?
I know that he was a conqueror, and
Okay.
his name is Aegon, and he's part
Okay.
of the Targaryen house.
Yep.
No, I mean just from a few things that they've mentioned, basically in House of the Dragon, of he was. I mean, he was this big, not a big person, but like a big idol. I mean, he was well thought of. A lot of people um respected him, I guess you could say. I don't know. They looked up to him. And it always seems like people were looking for the next Aegon the Conqueror. I
Yeah.
mean, people were naming their kids after him, or at least in the Targaryen house.
Yeah.
So I
And they
mean it's a
and they repeat
well-respected
a lot of
name.
those names. And
Right,
Aegon's
right.
not even funny thing is like Aegon the first, who we know as Aegon the Conqueror. He's not even the first Aegon in their family line, but he is the defining Aegon. He was the only one to do anything that great, and so
Right.
history knows him as
Significant.
Aegon the first. Um, yeah, like you were saying, like so much is thought of him. He's such a massive historical figure that time is changed around his um, conquering of Westeros. So time after that is referred to as BC before conquest and AC after conquest.
Okay.
So like
So a lot
from
revolve around him.
yes.
That's crazy.
Well, he
But I mean, just
changes.
I mean, just shows like the impact he had on the history of Westeros.
Yeah, he changes the course of Westeros forever, like the way things are done, how things are handled. Before Aegon comes, there are 7 kings, not 7 lords, 7 kings on this one continent together. So,
Okay. Okay.
we're gonna go back just a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy in this and give you a whole episode about Valyria and pre-Targaryen dynasty in Westeros. Because we're mainly just going to be covering what is covered in Fire and Blood.
Okay.
Um, but we're going to go back just a little bit to um, 12 years prior to the Doom of Valyria. Now, have
Okay.
you heard the Doom of Valyria referenced in House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones at all?
Yes. Yeah. I remember hearing about it in House of the Dragon.
Okay.
So yeah.
So Valyria is the place across to the east from Westeros. And that is where the Targaryens come from. That's where House Velaryon comes from.
Did you say
From
east or west? I'm sorry.
east. Yeah.
East. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Eventually, it would be west if you went far enough.
Oh, geez.
um,
Oh, this is not a flat Earth?
no,
Oh,
no.
boy.
Planetos is not a flat continent. Not that I know of,
Is that the name of it?
or the
Planetos?
flat planet. Yeah, Planetos.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to look up maps, so that's why I'm asking some of those questions.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Gotcha.
Um. So
I'm a visual learner. I need visual aid.
so
Go ahead.
Valyria is destroyed in a cataclysmic event. Um, it's just think of it like a natural disaster. There's a lot of disputed stuff kind of out there that um and when I say like differing accounts and disputed stuff, I'm talking about in this world, like in the history of this world, not your opinion on it, my opinion on it. Um, so they do a lot of like blood magic and sorcery and stuff like that in Valyria, and a lot of claims are that furthered along this cataclysmic event.
Okay.
12 years before that happens, Daenys Targaryen, who is the son of Aenar Targaryen, or the daughter of Aenar Targaryen, she has a dream. In House of the Dragon, Viserys
Right.
talks about dreams, how there's dreamers in the Targaryen family who can see the future.
Right.
She has a dream that foresees the destruction of Valyria and the death of everyone.
Okay.
And so on that, her father takes his house, the Targaryens, because in Valyria, there's tons of these Dragon Lord families. The Targaryens are just one of them.
Okay.
And they're not even like top dogs. When you think about them in Westeros, they're, top of the food chain. But in Valyria, they were only like a mid-range house. So still very wealthy, still very powerful, but that just shows you the power of Valyria.
Right.
You look very confused over there. What's going on?
No. You're good. I'm looking at a family tree now, and it's kind of tiny, so I'm having to look. That's why I'm getting close to the screen. I'm having to look at like small names. So get my readers on here. No,
Okay.
I'm good. And I'm
It's okay.
listening. Like I said,
You won't
I'm
need the
trying to
tree
follow
too.
too because,
Yeah,
like I said,
you won't
I
need the
need
tree too
visual aid.
much because we're gonna go straight from Aenar to Aegon, and we pass over like 8 Targaryens in the middle there. So, um,
Okay.
so on the dream of his daughter, he takes his house, all his relatives, their dragons, and they move to the furthest most Valyrian outpost in the world.
Now, who's this
And
again? I'm sorry.
Aenar Targaryen.
Okay, Anar. Okay.
Yeah. Aenar with the daughter Daenys.
Gotcha.
Um, he takes everybody, all their dragons and everything, and goes west across the sea to the Valyrians' furthest westernmost outpost,
Okay.
which is Dragonstone. It's an island off the coast of Westeros, out past Blackwater Bay. So
I
about
know that
midway,
place.
so about midway down the continent. And if you know where um, King's Landing is eventually set up, then it's just straight back east from there. It's an island off the coast.
Okay.
The Targaryens settle in there for many years and just kind of grow their power there. There's plenty of room for the dragons. They build this massive fortress there. I think I read some stuff that said there was probably like blood magic done there also. And they, along with the House Velaryon, who is just a little further up the coast there at Driftmark, they helped control trade that goes through Blackwater Bay there from the east to the west. And so, yeah, they just grow really rich and powerful, just hanging out at Dragonstone. 12 years after they arrive, Valyria is destroyed in this event, and they're the only dragon lords left. Like, they're the only people in the world. These people who were just a mid-range house, are now the only people with that power left in the world. So very, not rags to riches, riches to riches, but
it's a lateral move.
yeah. And so, yeah, just a little bit of background there. We're going to go straight from Aenar to Aegon because there's not a lot to talk about with the other Targaryens in the middle there. They all just kind of do their thing at Dragonstone.
Yeah.
The Targaryens are involved in several wars over the years. They've got the power of dragons, so obviously that's always going to be sought after.
Any war that comes up, it's like you're going to be dragged into it, basically.
Yeah.
Because people are going to wine and dine you for your dragons.
Yeah. And there's specifically a period of time after the doom of Valyria in the east called the Century of Blood. And it's essentially a power grab. Like, Valyria is gone, and they control most of what's in the east at this time. There's Valyrian freeholds all over the place, and like these settlements. So they have a lock. They get slaves from all over, these different places. And with them being gone, there's really kind of a mad power grab from all these different places over there in the east.
Okay.
We're not going to get into the east today either because that is a whole nother thing. We're going to focus on the west. We're going to focus on Westeros.
Thank God.
Aegon Targaryen kind of makes a name for himself, fighting in the Century of Blood. And I believe he was fighting mostly in Essos. I believe that was right.
Now, is this when you say an Aegon? You're talking about the Conqueror,
I'm talking
right?
about the Conqueror.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Here on
because I know we just you just said something about like, oh well, he's not really the first in the line with the name Aegon, or whatever. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, he is the Aegon. Yeah, he is the
Aegon. Okay.
So Aegon makes a name for himself, Century of Blood, fighting over in the east. But I did like the quote that I heard this a couple places and read it, that Aegon, when he looked to the east, he saw the past. Like, when he comes home from the war, he looks to the east and he sees the past. It's dead, it's tired, like it's the past. When he looks west, he sees the future. And he sees the future of his house. Some accounts by different maesters say that until the day that Aegon and his sisters landed in Blackwater Rush, that they had never been to Westeros. But there are different accounts that say that Aegon had visited the Arbor, and he had... some reports say he'd been to Lannisport, which is where Casterly Rock is. But either way. So I want to give you like a little bit of background about what's going on in Westeros at this time too.
Okay.
Aegon's still on Dragonstone. Nothing's happened yet. No spark to light the fire. In Westeros, there are 7 kings, and there's a king for each area, basically, of the map, the different,
right,
little counties. And so we've got, let's see, House Aaron are the kings of Mountain and Vale. House Hor are the kings of the Isles and the Rivers. House Durrandon are the Storm Kings. House Gardner, King of the Reach. House Lannisters, King of the Rock. House Stark, King in the North. And House Martell, which is the Princess of Dorne. They don't do like a king and queen. The Dornish call their leaders princes and princesses. I don't know.
Okay.
That never like dawned on me until just now. I was like,
why?
oh yeah, why did they do that? Like, even when they're like 50 years old, he's like, my prince. Like, no,
Weird.
that's the
Hmm.
king.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where Westeros is at this time. All these kingdoms just fight with each other constantly, like over land.
Oh, for sure.
It's
Yeah,
mostly over land. There's not a whole lot
right.
of territories drawn up, and so land gets pushed back and taken.
Hmm.
You know. Um,
Your
so
basic everyday, explorers deciding, in early ages to take a land because they feel like it's not really truly claimed, right?
yeah.
So
Um, and
classic.
then so before we get into them actually coming over, um, I did want to mention too that at this point they already have Aegon and his sisters already have 3 full-grown dragons. That's gonna be the other thing about this too. Even though I feel like history in their world really remembers the men in the Targaryen line, um, Aegon's sisters were just as like it was the
Important or
three of them.
remembered.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Aegon and Visenya and Rhaenys. Um, and they all had major hands in different battles
In the
during the war.
conquest.
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of times Aegon goes by himself on Balerion with, men at arms, knights, whatever, but then he'll send Visenya to go take another castle with Oris Baratheon, um, or Rhaenys and Oris Baratheon, something like that. So they're taking on just as much of the weight as him. Now, Rhaenys and Visenya's dragons are younger than Aegon's. Aegon's dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, is the oldest dragon at this time and the only dragon left to have seen Valyria before the Doom.
Do you think, go back to the sisters real quick. Do you
Yeah.
think that his sisters, influence the characters that we see in some of the women characters that we see in House of the Dragon, specifically Rhaenyra and even Rhaenys? Because I mean, I don't know like how all the different. I mean, they seem like the sisters seem like they want to be out there too on the battlefield. They have their dragons. Of course, everybody's got their dragons. In the House of Targaryen, it's not like it's just for the men, or anything like that. But I don't know. I just kind of wonder if like they look up to the sisters in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. They're It's like they are very different. So I'm kind of trying to think of some people who could like match them in the story, like in the show. Visenya is more warrior queen type. Um, Rhaenys is kind of the daintier one. She's not a physical fighter. She fights on her dragon a lot, but she likes to fly more than anything.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if I can think of two that really match up. They tried to make a lot more of the comparison between Daenerys Targaryen and um, Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Right.
I feel like that
Yeah.
was a lot more
Yeah.
the. Yeah, I don't see as much of like the conquerors in people from House of the Dragon.
Okay. Yeah. I just curious.
Yeah, I think there are Targaryens like that in the line, but yeah, these three really kind of stand alone.
Okay.
Um, so we
Yeah.
talked
My bad.
about.
I interrupted you there.
Oh no, you're good. I just kind of lost track a little bit.
That's yeah.
Um, so yeah, some people say that Aegon never visited before his invasion, but a couple key places that they say he did visit were the Arbor, which is a major shipping port, and the Citadel of Old Town, which at this time think of it as it's like the capital in Westeros, pretty much. Um, but even a couple years before the conquest, Aegon had the painted table created. He, Visenya, and Rhaenys flew over Westeros, and after returning to Dragonstone, he ordered the construction of the painted table. So it's already on his brain, you know,
Yeah.
even if he
He's
hasn't
planning.
decided to attack. Yeah.
At least know like what's beyond you,
Yeah.
rather than just trying to go in blind. Yeah. Whether it's for a conquest or not, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But how many years I'm sure we've discussed this at some point, but how many years between the conquest and um the
The
well,
dance.
yeah, there you go, the dance. I forget. Well, they
Um,
said it, I'm pretty sure, but I forget.
yeah, I don't remember how many years exactly it is between the conquest and the dance. I was it like I think it's over 100,
Okay.
I believe.
Well, okay, maybe this will make it simpler. Do you know how many years between Aegon's conquest and then Viserys taking the throne? I mean, that may be even
No,
harder, but come on, man, you're supposed to know these things.
I know. Yeah, years always get me though.
Okay. Yeah, just curious. Kind of, again, just
Okay,
trying to
yeah,
paint a picture here
about 100 years. So
between the dance and the
the
conquest.
conquest,
Okay.
yes.
What officially, because again, it's been a little bit, but what officially kicks, like, what is the official starter of this is the dance of the dragon?
What's
Is
the
it a, what's really like, you know what I'm saying?
what is considered like in the timeline the official start
What,
of the dance?
yes. Is Aegon coming onto the throne, being placed onto the throne?
I believe
Not the
so.
conqueror,
Yeah.
but
I
you know what I'm
think
saying.
I think it was him usurping him.
Right.
Even in the actual story, Aemon kills Lucerys, like the way we saw it in the show.
Right.
And so that is kind of like that's where, like that's the kickoff. But I believe it is, yeah, that they probably categorize it that way, the
Usurping. Yeah.
crowning of Aegon the second.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
Okay. Back to where we were.
right. Okay, so Aegon kind of finds himself, he kind of finds an opportunity to be, to come in here. Harren Hoare, so we mentioned House Hoare, Hoare.
Just a bunch of whores.
House Hoare. So Harren Hoare, who is the king of the Isles and Rivers, they are Ironborn. So at this time, the Ironborn have a lot more power than they do any other time. When you see the Ironborn in Game of Thrones, it's like they're pretty much confined to the Iron Islands.
Right.
But yeah, at this time they have a massive hold on the Riverlands, and they are, yeah, the kings of the Riverlands. So Harren Hoare, he's building this insane castle. It's called Harrenhal. I'm sure you've seen it in Game of Thrones, what's left of it.
Yeah.
Um, and he was building this massive castle. It was the biggest that would ever have been built um, in Westeros. I think it's supposed to be like the tallest, maybe, because there's other castles that kind of like span more area. But um, so he's nearing completion of this massive castle. Um, he's going back and forth all the time with the Stormlands because they're right there. Um, Yeah, so at this time, on any map you're going to look at, there's going to be Harrenhal, King's Landing, and Storm's End. But at this time, there's no King's Landing. So there's like no buffer between Harrenhal, Kingdom of the River, and Storm's End, which is the Storm Kings.
Okay.
And so, like I was saying, all the time they go back and forth on, the boundary moves. This land's mine, this land's yours. This land's mine, this land's yours. Just constant fighting.
Okay.
And so Argalac Durrandon, who is the Storm King at the time, he's getting more and more worried about Harren the Black moving in on him. So he sends a message to Aegon, and because he knows who Aegon is. Aegon's already kind of made a name for himself at this point. Sends a message to him and wants to offer his daughter Argala in like a marriage pact.
We all know what that means in the world of Westeros. It's a power move.
Yeah. With lands for them too. And Argalac's plan was to put the Targaryens as a buffer between himself and Harren the Black.
Yep.
So Aegon refuses, basically based on the fact that he knows the lands aren't Argalac's to give. It's been like 2 generations or something, and that land hasn't belonged to him.
Right. Smart man.
And Aegon already has 2 wives. In the Targaryen tradition, he's married his sister Visenya, and then kind of against tradition, he also married his sister Rhaenys. So he has 2 wives.
Double the inbreeding.
Yeah, it's not like without precedent, but so he offers his daughter. Aegon refuses. He already has 2 wives, but he offers to still make the pact with him if he can get those lands, different lands, some more land thrown in there,
right?
Better land. And then
that's also, actually his to rightly give.
Yeah, and then also the marriage pact can be sealed between Argala and Oris Baratheon, who is and Oris Baratheon is Aegon's like best friend, his childhood friend. He is also rumored to be Aegon's bastard brother.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the thought. It was like he was played off to be somebody else's kid, and he was Aegon's friend, but it's thought that he was Aegon's bastard half-brother.
Okay.
And different people might take that different ways, but Harren the Black's very proud, and he does not want to marry his daughter to a bastard. He cuts off the hands of Aegon's messenger and sends them back to Aegon and says that these are the only hands that your bastard brother will get from me. Like, no hand of my daughter in marriage.
Nice.
Like, yeah.
Right.
So that's really the spark that lights the fire. Aegon's already clearly had a lot of this in his head, how he could, maybe a complete conquest like that wasn't in his head, but he was obviously looking to make some strategic moves, because he would have done oh man, I totally said that wrong. I don't know why I said that. Okay. So a couple times I said it right the first time, but a couple times I said that this was a marriage pact between Aegon and Harren the Black. I meant Argalac Durrandon, the Storm King.
Okay.
So Argalac's daughter is Argala. Yeah.
And he's the one that cut off the hands and sent it back to him.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Not Harren the Black.
Gotcha.
So it looks like you could argue that Aegon was trying to make a move into more inward to the continent through diplomacy, but they kind of pushed this on him. It was an insult he wouldn't suffer.
Right.
Okay, so Aegon doesn't take that well. He calls his banners, which are like two people. It's just always funny. Like at this time, like
Is it? Is this
yeah,
everybody?
it's Targaryens, the Valarians, the who else was with them?
Somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody was. Targaryens.
Yep.
Get the Valerians. But who else? It's a third person.
We'll get there. We'll come across them here in a minute.
Okay. Okay. It'll come to you at the wrong time.
Yeah. So Aegon calls his banners, takes counsel. They send ravens out to every corner of the seven kingdoms, not just to the kings, to every small lord, like everybody.
Anybody they can get.
Yes. And they say that from this day forward, Westeros will only have one king. And those who kneel and swear fealty will keep their lands, their titles. They'll be, they'll be taken care of.
They'll be grandfathered in.
Yeah, if you kneel.
Right. Which is, that seems to be something we see a lot of.
Yeah.
Over the history.
Spoiler alert. A lot of proud lords and kings, and pretty much nobody wants to submit.
Well, and that was my other thing too, is like, do most of these people even really know who he is at that point?
Some people do, but
because then I'd be like, because that's what I was thinking, is like, well, how long have you even been on Westeros? And it's like, if you haven't really been around and you just know the people that are basically around you, and you send to all the corners of the continent, you get this letter and you're like, who the heck is Aegon? I don't know who this guy is. Why would I ever kneel to this dude? I've never even met him.
Well, I think the Targaryen name would speak a lot for itself,
Okay.
Word travels a lot back and forth between continents here, and there's a lot of people who fly on dragons who have destroyed entire fleets with them and stuff like that. They're going to be known about,
right?
Especially by kings, like
right.
The people high up. And so he gives him an out in the beginning, but a lot of these people are very proud. They've been at war for years and years and years. They've all been fighting each other for a long time, and so a lot of these people aren't gonna back down until they see the destruction that can be caused,
which is then will be too late.
Yes,
way too late.
After all these letters go out, a couple responses come back from Miriam Martell, who is the Princess of Dorne, and from Shara Aaron, who is the Queen Regent in the Vale. Do you know what a Queen Regent is?
I do not.
So she's like mother of the king, but the king is underage. So she's
basically
until he comes of age. Yep.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
And so Mary Martell and Dorne, Shara Aaron in the Vale.
What's the age that he wouldn't have her there as, acting queen or whatever?
I think it's like 16 or 18.
Okay.
Hard to say. We see a lot of these like young lords who are like 16 leading their men into battle, so I think it's something like that.
Okay.
They will send back offers to Aegon of alliance rather than submission.
Right.
Mary Martell, they had problems with the Stormlands because they're both so close to each other, so they fight back and forth a lot.
Right.
Um, and so she said she'd be Aegon's ally against Argilac. And then Shara Aaron, she wanted to get the eastern bank of the Green Fork from Heron the Black. And so that was her thing. She was like, I'll join up with you against Heron, but neither of them want to submit.
Right. Now Aegon's still in Dragonstone, right?
Yes, he's still at
Okay.
Dragonstone.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm looking at a map, so I'm just trying to
Yeah,
piece
no,
it
you're
all
good.
together right here. Get used to it, people. I will ask dumb questions.
Um,
What is this show about again?
All right,
Carry
now
on.
we're going to go on to Aegon's Landing. So I'm not going
Okay.
to, there's not obviously a ton to talk about with each of these battles. Some have more than others. The biggest one is going to be the Field of Fire, which is like the end to the war, pretty much.
Okay.
That's the one we have the most detail on, the one we know the most about. Um, the others, you just get kind of brief, small descriptions of what kind of happened there. These aren't detailed accountings. Everything's written, so it's like a maester's accounting. It's a scholar's accounting of what they know in their history, what's been kept track of. So,
Right.
all right. Aegon's Landing. So the war begins in 2 BC. So I guess they start, you know, they would call it, instead of it being 0 or 1 BC. Yeah, because it's 2 years before, the war takes 2 years. I think I mentioned that earlier.
Okay.
War begins in 2 BC before Aegon Targaryen and his two sisters land. Different accounts of how many men they come in with. I saw stuff that said up to 3,000. I saw stuff that was like 800. So a big theme here is you're going to see is the Targaryens don't have the force of men. Like they do not have the men at any point during this.
We
And the
don't
only
we don't need
reason,
them.
yeah, the only reason that they get a bigger army as the conquest goes on is because the people that Aegon's conquered join the ranks of his army.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So they come in with a really small force.
Join or die, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Um, okay,
Which
so
why
yeah,
wouldn't you want to join? I mean, the dragons are going to do much of the damage anyway, so
yeah.
you don't have to do much.
Um, this was the part where okay, the other houses that they're allied with are because there's only a couple of them. There's the Targaryens, and they're supported by the Celtigars, the Masseys, and the Velaryons.
Okay.
Celtigar, Massey, and Velaryon all trace their roots back to Valyria.
Okay.
So that is why this relationship all works out so well for them. Plus, they all have strategic holds up the west side or up the east side of Westeros.
Okay.
With Dragonstone, I believe, being the furthest. Actually, Macy's Hook might be further south than Dragonstone. But they
It's
all
yeah, it's
have
it's further south, just
okay.
just south of it.
Yeah, it's on the hook there.
Yes, yeah. Hence the hook
Um,
in the name.
yeah, so they've all been in these little places along the coast. They've been able to get a lot of trade that passes through. They're all doing pretty well for themselves, and they're all allied up.
Do you know what some
Um,
of the other you were talking about the coastal holds? Do you know some other names though? Just because I'm looking at a map.
Storm's End.
Okay, right.
Um, Sunspear is pretty close to the coast, but
Is it let's see, Sunspear? I don't see that.
Sunspear is in Dorne.
Oh, okay, so it's south. Oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see it now. Oh, there's okay. I didn't realize the stepstones were up there too. Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah. The fingers, I believe, like are on that side. Oh, wait, maybe not. It might be on the other side. Here's the thing that like drove me crazy for so long was like in my head, like before going through any of the maps and stuff, obviously like the last couple years,
Right. Oh, the fingers were
everything,
way up north.
yeah, everything
Oh,
was
okay.
reversed in my head. Like like everything that was on the west
East
coast of
Coast beyond
Westeros
the
was
yeah.
on the east coast. Like in my
Right.
head, just the way I had kind of like imagined
Wonder
it.
wonder why that is.
I don't know. I mean, it's all laid out. If you really like look through this stuff, like it should have been obvious to me.
Yeah,
But
it's just kind of interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um God, where were we? Okay. So
Yeah, sorry.
you're good. Aegon's Landing, 2 BC. Um Aegon lands at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, where King's Landing will eventually be constructed.
Is that why they call it
Um,
King's Landing?
yes.
Gotcha. Which I assume
Um,
that's what it was.
yeah. They put up a little fort. They call it the Aegon Fort. And he's backed up by all his boys there, the Celtigars, the Massies, the Valarians, and Oris Baratheon. Pretty quickly, I believe they call this the first test. Um, the the first couple houses that submit to Aegon are the Rossbys. They yield to Rhaenys, and then House Stokeworth. They yield also. House Stokeworth. They did shoot a couple crossbow bolts at Visenya, but she lit a bunch of the upper decks of the castle and buildings on fire, and so they were like, "All right, yep, we're out."
That was the we didn't mean to do that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, that was just a part of the landing. What they call the first test is the Darklands of Duskendale and the Mootons of Maidenpool. They come together. They put their armies together. They only have about 3,000 guys, and they march on Aegon. Aegon sends Oris Baratheon out to meet them, and then Aegon comes in on Balerion. This happens a lot. Aegon sends the army out, and then he throws a dragon at you. And it's usually him.
Lull you into a sense of security almost.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's just gonna be hand on hand, combat, and then all of a sudden here comes the dragon. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah. And it's a pretty quick fight. So let's see. So after Lord Rosby and Lord Stokeworth, or I'm sorry, after Lord Darklin and Lord Mooton are both killed in the battle, Lord Darklin's son and Lord Mooton's brother yield up their castles and their swords. They swear fealty.
Okay.
You're going to see this a lot too. The brave father or brother who fought and died, and their son or brother is like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." Like, yeah, we're with you, bud.
I was always on your side. He would never listen to me. I wanted him to join you, but he wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Be nice to
So
see if like there was like maps of like the progress of like his conquest. I'm surely there's some out there, but
yeah, some of the ones you can see like each, I guess like the change after each battle, or
right. Let's see.
um. So both Darklin and Mooton join Aegon after the first test. Um, this is the after these battles. This is what they call the first crowning. Um, Visenya crowns Aegon with um, a Valyrian steel circlet. I don't know if this is the crown of the Conqueror or if it's one that he gets in Old Town. I can't remember. We'll see when we get there. Um, but this is when they proclaim him Aegon, first of his name, king of all Westeros, and shield of his people. So this is before the titles bestowed on him at Old Town, which is Aegon, king of Westeros, of the king of the Rhoynar and the First Men. Yeah, the whole titles.
Right. You could never have enough titles.
Yeah. Um, the next one is the battle in the waters off Goldtown. Um, so
Yes.
Daemon
Okay.
Velaryon, who
Hmm.
is head of the Velaryon house at this time, he's sent with Visenya on Vhagar to go deal with House Aaron. They get there, and the Aarons, even though their fleet is not that impressive, they are backed up by, I believe 12 Braavosi warships.
Okay.
So probably sellswords. It's Braavosi, so I think it's fair to assume there's some kind of sellsword company that's been bought by the Aarons to defend them. But they defeat the Targaryen fleet in battle there at Goldtown. And then Daemon Velaryon actually dies there. Visenya comes in. There's a lot of in my head, I'm always like, they always wait. Like in during Aegon's conquest, they always wait to use the dragons until it's like a last resort.
Right.
When I'm constantly just like, man, you don't have the men to work with. I feel like we can't sit around and wait for a bunch of guys to die, realize it's not going to work, and then swoop in with the dragons. That's always kind of
Well,
bothered me.
I mean, it's almost kind of like, I mean, why don't you just take all of them at once and like his dragons and his sister's dragons all at once and just, I mean, dude, you could save so many lives, from
Yeah,
being just wasted on the battlefield on your side.
yeah.
But I don't know.
I mean, he
Maybe he
does
just felt like
use.
he was worried that maybe they would have, defenses against the dragons and be able to bring them down. Because it's like you lose one dragon, I mean, that's worth, how many men? God awful a number, but yeah, I don't know.
I feel like that's the other side of this. They don't. When you
And you
think of
almost
them, you're like they're
you,
indestructible,
right,
but they're
but they're
not.
not. Jinx.
Yeah, yeah, but they're not. And even if not hitting the scales or something, a dragon could get hit in the eye
Right.
or
And the wing.
these more vulnerable places.
Right.
And not to mention the fact that you could just take an arrow on the back of this thing, like flying
It's
it
very
around,
true. Very true.
So
You would
he does
almost think though
use.
too that it would be like disheartening though if you're a soldier in that army to be like you'd be questioning it all the time. Like, why are we having to go into this battle when you have this massive dragon that could just go ahead of us? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, we can just clean up after that. It's kind of like go like switch. It's like, why don't you do the dragon first and then we'll just kind of sweep through. But I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
So they lose a good chunk of the Valarian fleet here. But then Visenya comes in on Vhagar. And that's the other crazy thing to me. Like going through all this stuff is that, we see Vhagar in House of the Dragon.
Right.
And like that's the same dragon that was here in the Conquest, like doing all these crazy things, killing all these people.
Right. It's got some miles on it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so she destroys the Aaron fleet, burns their ships, um, and kind of forces a submission there. The Aarons still don't submit to the Targaryens for quite a while after this. But Visenya comes in to kind of throw a little bit of vengeance and clean it up.
Okay.
Some of these things are kind of happening simultaneously. Some of them are happening a little bit later than the others. I said the conquest only takes 2 years, so we're obviously not jumping around too much. Um, but the
Now
next thing, yeah,
they're not all together, right? The siblings are not all together. I
no,
mean, or they're more or less kind of like spreading out to conquer more territory at
yeah,
once.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He sent Daemon Valarian with the fleet and
Right.
Visenya to the Vale.
Okay. Gotcha.
At the same time, or just a little bit after, Aegon um, goes on his own to Harrenhal. So this is where Heron the Black is, king of Island Rivers. Um, he gets attacked a couple times on the road. Um, Actually, I wanted to go up to the specific. So on his march up to Harrenhal, he gets attacked a couple times. They call him the Battle of the Reeds and the Wailing Willows. Battle of the Reeds is fought on the south shore of the God's Eye, and Aegon defeats an attack, a surprise attack by Harrenhal's men.
Is the God's Eye, is that's just south of Harrenhal? That kind of empty spot?
Yes, yes,
There's a river or a lake or something like that, I guess.
yes.
Okay. What I
Um,
do? Yeah.
and then also on the road, the battle that they call the Wailing Willows. Um, yeah, they're both kind of in the same spot. It says they're both on the southern shore of the God's Eye. Um, the two sons, well, two of the sons of King Harrenhal, they retaliate for this and they cross the God's Eye. And the big thing here was a sneak attack. They have muffled oars, so you can't hear them like going through the water.
Interesting.
And
How'd they
then
do that?
I'm not really sure like what a muffled oar
Like
technique is.
maybe wrap it in something.
Yeah, if you wrapped it in like a long enough cloth, maybe you couldn't hear it as it came in and out of the water because it would always be in the water.
Right.
Like something that's kind of what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
Something that keeps it's a connection between it and the water so that you
Right.
never get the sound of it leaving the water.
Yeah.
So this is a retaliation by Harrenhal's sons. They Targaryens take pretty heavy casualties here. But both of Harren's sons on their retreat back across the lake are killed by um, Aegon on Balerion. Um, so they're gone back and forth a little bit already just on the road to Harrenhal.
Up on Harrenhal, fire and blood in the sky.
Okay, so we have these two conflicts on the road to Harrenhal. Um, and when Aegon gets there, I believe Harren comes out to him and he says there's no way I'm gonna I'm not gonna surrender to you.
Right.
He's a crazy old guy. He's confident that his new castle will withstand the siege and everything. Um, so a little bit of the background on like the Riverlands at this time. Riverlands are ruled by the Whores who are Ironborn. Um, and there's a lot of houses that are in the middle here that people are going to know. There's the Tullys, who are the biggest one. Blackwoods, Mallisters, Vances, Brackens, Pipers, Freys, Strongs. And they all decide to join up with Aegon. Um, so Okay, yeah. So they before the battle even commences at Harrenhal, um, all these river lords start defecting. The Tullys are the first to be like, "Hey, we're not gonna," because when Harrenhal starts calling his banners, all those river houses are the ones who get called up. Um,
Right.
and yeah, and so the Tullys are like, "No, we're not going to do it." And then all the houses I just mentioned, they back the Tullys and don't go either.
Right. Domino
Um,
effect.
yeah, and they start fighting Heron's own men as they march south to Harrenhal. Um, Heron shuts
Hmm.
everybody out. He feels like he can withstand a siege. Aegon tells him, like, it doesn't matter how high your walls are. I have the dragon. Like, this is not going to work out for you.
It makes me think of something I learned in history back in my high school days when you're talking about the Tullys and then everybody else kind of going the same path as them, is basically turning on the on Heron Hall and basically fighting them all of a sudden. Makes you think of when in World War II, when in the Italian campaign, I had read when they got pretty grim for the Italians, that a bunch of their people started defecting like in the middle of battle and would just like turn around and start shooting on their own men. So basically like switching sides in the middle of a battle.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, the thing with like Heron too is they hated him. He had completely bled the Riverlands dry of resources and wealth in construction of Harrenhal, just
Oh,
raising
okay.
taxes, raising taxes, raising taxes. And they say thousands of people died building this castle.
Jeez.
So, yeah. So people are pretty pissed with him, and then they see an out and they take it. Um, Happens a lot with dictator types. Um, so Aegon and Heron have their back and forth. Um, that night when the sun goes down, Aegon flies Balerion way up into the sky, all the way up. So he's like a dot on the moon and comes back down inside the castle keep. Like he's out there and like in the woods or whatever, flies up and doesn't descend until he's like right over the castle, comes all the
Look,
way back down.
what the heck is that up there? Is that
What is that?
a Chinese balloon? What is that?
It's not a Chinese balloon. It's a fire breathing dragon.
Ah! Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty crazy. It's like I'll light up the night. It's just like, is it morning already? Why is it so bright out?
he burns the castle on the way, burns the castle on the way down. Um, and so like everything, like Heron was right. Yeah, stone can't burn technically, but everything inside the castle could. And so Aegon just heats up the castle, just keeps pouring fire into it until the towers melt like molten rock. They like
Right.
run. Like that's why Harrenhal looks the way it does in Game of Thrones. Um, Everything's all runny and messed up. The stone towers cracked and melted. Um, People say it looked like candles from outside, like burning candles with like wax rolling down the sides.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, see, that's got to be
Heron,
a weird scene.
yeah, Heron, his remaining sons, burn alive in the tower. Um, yeah, with them being dead, House Horror is completely wiped out here. We're going to see a few houses that were major players during Aegon's conquest, and who had been for generations before that, just get completely wiped off the map.
Okay.
So, and I bet you didn't know this. the original owners of Highgarden were not House Tyrell.
No.
It's House Gardner, another family that was completely wiped off the map.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All I can think of is he is legend now.
Gardner. Um. Oh yeah, and I haven't really mentioned this yet. So at each of these battles, Aegon is having all the swords of his defeated enemies packed up and sent back to the Aegon fort.
Okay.
They're all in various conditions depending on how things went. If they stand and fought and they burned, the blades are black and twisted and fucked up. But if they kneeled,
To put it simply
then
put.
yeah, then the blades are pristine and in their original condition.
Right.
Yeah, only a few of Heron's supporters make it back to the Iron Islands. The Rivermen burn out the rest of Heron's men that are in their country. Edmund Tully, who is now head of House Tully, he swears fealty to Aegon, and is named Lord Paramount of the Trident. So he gives him an honor there. Think of it kind of like Warden of the Riverlands, kind of. There's like a Warden of the Northeast, West, and South.
Right.
Kind of the Warden of the Riverlands.
Okay.
They're over the other houses, the Freys, Blackwoods, Brackens. At the time, we see in Game of Thrones, Harrenhal gets passed around a lot. Harrenhal, the castle, is not important anymore. It's Harrenhal, the land. The land surrounding Harrenhal. There's a lot of land. That's why Littlefinger wants it. So that's the thing with Harrenhal. But at the time, Aegon gives it to House Cohoris, who Quentin Cohoris was his master at arms at Dragonstone. So we see this a lot in the Conquest. Aegon raises up those who kneel to him and gives them honors, but he also gives honors to the people who've been with him from the beginning.
Okay.
Just these people that were with him at the start.
Which is only fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So he rewards loyalty. By all accounts, Aegon the Conqueror is a pretty good guy, at least what we know of him,
Right.
Probably one of the more honorable Targaryens. There's some honorable ones out there, but he's definitely up there. I can't think of anything bad to say about Aegon the First. So
right.
So our next section here is going to be the battle that's called the Last Storm. And that takes place at Storm's End. This is Orys Baratheon and Rhaenys, I believe. Yes. Orys Baratheon and Rhaenys versus the Storm King Argilac. Argilac also calls in his banners. The official combatants on this one are House Targaryen against the Kingdom of Storm, which is House Durrandon, House Morrigan, and House Dondarrion. Morrigan, you don't really hear about them in Game of Thrones. House Dondarrion, though, you do hear about them. Beric Dondarrion is the most notable of House Dondarrion from Game of Thrones. Okay. I also believe that Quentin Martell, or not Quentin Martell, what can I think of his name? The Kingsguard guy who's super mad at Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon. Christian Cole.
Christian Cole.
I'm pretty sure House Cole is sworn to House Dondarrion. They're like a sub of them.
Okay.
Um, so Argilac feels pretty confident. His big thing is like he's an old warrior king. He has this really badass reputation. Um, and he doesn't want to die like Heron does. He doesn't want to die in his castle burning alive. He's going to go out there and he's going to meet the Targaryens on the field. And if he dies, but he dies sword in hand. Um, a storm starts at the beginning of this fight. Oris Baratheon takes a smart position up on a high hill. That way, Argilac's men have to go uphill to attack them. In the rain, even with twice as many men, Argilac has twice as many men as the Targaryens. Um, they can't break through the line. They have a ton of knights and horsemen, but horses are having trouble making it up. Like I said, there's a big storm.
Right.
It's making the ground super wet. They throw 3 charges at the hill, and all 3 break. They can't push through. On the 4th charge, I believe it was because they pushed through with spearmen. Yeah. On the 4th charge, they pushed through with spearmen. And they managed to conquer a couple of these hills. There's like 3 hills that they're fighting on all together. And on Argilac's 4th charge, they break through the center of the middle hill. And when they break through the center, behind all those men is Rhaenys on Meraxes. So imagine that, like you finally get to push through this line. You're making it through.
We made it.
And then behind a couple guys, all you can see is this dragon crouched and waiting.
Yeah, that would suck. Yeah.
So, and she's got the dragon down on the ground because of the storm. So that's why she's like with the men there.
With the men, yeah.
And Rhaenys just cooks them all. Yeah.
Simply put, just cook them all. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple names there: Dickon Morrigan and the Bastard of Blackhaven. They were leading the vanguard, I believe, so they get roasted first. Argilac's personal guard gets burned up in that, and Storm King gets thrown from his horse in the confusion. Oris Baratheon realizes that everybody's kind of being routed. They're winning, and so they push. He finds Argilac down the hill. He's got 6 men dead at his feet, and like Targaryen men, and he's holding off another 6, like as Oris Baratheon rides up. He dismounts. He gives him another chance to bend the knee and just fall in line, and Argilac won't do it. So they begin single combat. It's said that each of them took a wound, but Argilac did die fighting. Oris Baratheon killed him. So after Argilac's death, it looks like Storm's End's still going to hold out against the Targaryens. Argilac's daughter, Argilla, she's just like her dad. She says that the only thing that the Targaryens are going to win from them will be bones and ashes. She's like, we're not going to give up. All you're going to get here is death and destruction. However, her bannermen and her soldiers don't feel the same way, because that night, after she makes this declaration to Oris, Oris finds her delivered to his tent, tied up, and basically is like, hey, like, here's the defector, we will fall in line.
Okay.
But Oris takes care of her. He wraps her in his cloak, and he tells her that her father fought bravely, and that he would like to honor him by taking on House Durrandon's sigil and house words, that he'll also marry Argala. And so, yeah, they have this relationship between them form. And then that is how House Baratheon comes to be the stag with the words, ours is the fury.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so house sigil and words are taken. After the submission of the Stormlands, Rhaenys flies from Storm's End and supports Aegon at the Field of Fire. So, the last of the actual battles before the Old Town coronation, and I say it that way, we'll get there, is the Field of Fire. And this is actually going to be the biggest one. This is going to be the most amount of men brought against the Targaryens in a single fight. So Loren the First Lannister, King of Rock, joins up with Mern Gardner, who's King of the Reach. Together, they have 55,000 men, and that is roughly 5 times the amount of the Targaryens. And that's including all the Targaryens, added on bulk there. The Rivermen, the Storm, people from the Stormlands. The official combatant lineup here is the Kingdom of Rock and the Kingdom of the Reach, Houses Lannister, Gardner, House Florent, Oakenheart, Peak, Redwine, and Rowan. Also a group known as the Order of the Green Hand. A lot of these guys are made up from those different houses. So
Okay.
Yeah, and Targaryens, 3 dragons, 11,000 men to 55,000 for the Lannisters and the Gardeners. So the Hightowers have also been called. Their banner has also been called, I believe. So Old Town would have been under Mern Gardner. So I believe he was called by the Gardeners and was advised not to go. So Old Town doesn't enter the fight. They've
Okay.
just got a hunch that this is not going to go well. So
Right.
they're going to stay
Well,
back.
after everything else that's happened,
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, you're really starting to have some tough talks about whether to really enter or just leave it be.
Yeah. So the 2 armies meet on the plains south of the Blackwater. So the plan was to, I believe they're gonna smash the center head on and then try to go around both sides and flank the Targaryens. So they're gonna hit them in the center, and they're also gonna send 2 groups around back. So again, the Targaryens kind of play it out. The charge from the Lannisters and the Gardeners begins to break the Targaryens, but Aegon and his sisters come in on the dragons. this place has been picked. Like the Targaryens decided to meet them in this spot because there hadn't been any rain for quite a while, and so the field is very dry. And so the Targaryens, Aegon and his sisters, start spraying fire all over the field. Upwind of the Gardeners and Lannisters. They protect their own men in this fight. There's very few Targaryen casualties. Fewer than 100 men. And the only one of Aegon and his sisters to take an injury in this is Visenya. I believe she takes an arrow in the arm, but she's fine.
Okay.
Dragons killed 4,000 men of the combined Lannister Gardner army. They kill King Mern, all of his sons, grandsons, brothers, cousins, everybody. I believe one of his sons or grandsons lives for like 3 days, but he's burned really bad, and he dies too.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how House Gardner just gets completely wiped out
basically,
there. Yeah. It's also the one time in the conquest where all 3 dragons took to a battlefield at the same time.
Right.
Aegon continues sending swords back to the Aegon fort. So they catch up with Lauren Lannister the following day, and he submits, gives up his kingship, and he's named as Warden of the West. When Aegon he heads for Highgarden after the fight, which was the seat of the Gardeners, hoping that somebody else isn't going to get there before him, just kind of trying to get there without conflict. When he gets there, some stewards for House Gardner, House Martell, are occupying the castle, and they give it up freely. For that, Aegon raises them up to be the Lord Paramounts of the Mander and the Wardens of the South. Okay, so main part of the conquest is done here. After the surrender of Highgarden, Aegon goes to the Red Fork, and because he's heard that Torrhen Stark has marched there with 30,000 Northmen.
So he goes back up north after the Field of Fire?
Yes.
Okay. And then they're going to come back down south to Old Town and the invasion of Doran.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I finally found a map that gives there's 3 different colors. Each color represents the siblings. And the way that they went throughout the battles and everything like that. So
yeah.
But it doesn't give directions of they went to Field of Fire and then he went back up north and da-da-da-da. So
yeah. So Aegon has 45,000 men now gathered from Riverlands, Stormlands, Reach, Westerlands. But after thinking about it, Torrhen Stark decides this is a bad idea, and he kneels in submission.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart.
And Aegon makes him Warden of the North. So he holds true to all these promises. If you just kneel, you'll get to keep everything you have. You just won't be able to call yourself king.
But that's the other thing too, is how many times have these people probably heard that from different, supposed kings or people that are going to come around. It's how truthful is it,
Yeah.
And but like you said, everything that he's promised has come true. So
Yeah. Um, and then in the Vale, much less pomp, not, no armies to bring around. Um, Shara Aaron just boosts her forces in a couple of key areas for the Vale. But none of it matters because Visenya flies Vagar right over all the mountains and straight to um, the Vale of Arryn.
it's a freaking cheat code, bro.
Yeah. Shar Aaron comes out into the courtyard to find her son, Ronald, sitting on Visenya's knee and asking if he can ride on the dragon. And so she's like completely shocked and afraid at this point.
Right.
And so Visenya takes him, flies around a few times, and then comes back down. And when she comes back down, Shara Aaron has like gone and gotten the crown of the moon, or I believe it's I can't remember what the crown is called, but she brings her the crown of the
About the
Aarons
moon.
and submits to her.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot less going on there, just kind of some veiled threats, and then the Vale finally submits. So then Aegon marches on Old Town after this, back south, and when he gets to Old Town, he finds that the gates are open and they welcome him into the city. House Hightower swears fealty.
They've made their decision.
Yeah, they've already made their choice. And then this is when they technically start the beginning of like AC, like his Old Town coronation
is the beginning.
when
okay.
that switchover is.
Okay.
Even though at this point Dorne is still
it's the last stand.
Like, yeah, has not been brought into the realm. The Iron Throne's constructed in the place where Aegon first landed. A lot of people thought that he would move like his house's seat either to Old Town and rule from there, or that he would make the new capital Dragonstone and rule from there. Neither happened because he decided he's going to set up shop at the Aegon Fort, which becomes
King's Landing.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it's perfect. I mean, it's a port city. You're basically in the middle of your realm. Because I feel like, Dragonstone's too far north, too far east, and it's out on an island. So it's kind of by itself. And then if you're in Old Town, yeah, you're on the coast, but you're way down in the far southwest, and you're closer than any of the other cities that you were possibly looking at to be your capital to Dorne, which again has still been unconquered.
Yeah.
So, which I guess at that point, maybe it would be okay to do that. That way you're a little bit closer to the action if you're going to invade, which, he does. But yeah, I just feel like Aegon's Fort becoming King's Landing is a good center spot.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's centralized
of the realm. Yeah.
It's
like I said, centralized, and it's still basically right there on a coast. So you have both by sea and by land. So
yeah. Then the Iron Throne is constructed. The story is that Balerion used his flames to forge all the steel together and create this monstrous throne. I went back and forth about doing all the Dornish conquest stuff in this episode too, but
too much.
Yeah, that's why we're going to have to go chapter by chapter here, because the next chapter is going to cover pretty much exclusively those battles.
Okay.
So while he is king of Westeros, one kingdom remains unconquered. Dorne. Super fitting because their house words are unbowed, unbent, unbroken.
Nice.
And when Rhaenys does go there, she delivers that message to the Princess Maria, I believe, that, if you don't surrender here, we'll come back with fire and blood. And then Maria replies, yes, but we are unbowed, and you will not bend us and you will not break us.
So, nice. Cool.
Yep. And thus will begin a 9-year war with Dorne.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty
Took 2
sad.
years to conquer the rest of the continent.
What does that say about the rest of you people in Westeros, man? It took 2 years to conquer you, and it's going to take us 9 years to conquer this small little southern piece. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, they make it very tough. We're going to see that the Dornish are not to be fucked with. They know what to do when somebody tries to invade. They know how to stay hidden and attack when it's important. They're going to deal some heavy blows to the Targaryens.
Okay.
So much so that in the end, Aegon's going to have to just accept a truce with them.
Really? Okay, so he didn't even defeat them.
No.
Dang.
Nope. The Dornish are not officially brought into the realm until Aegon the Dragon Knight. Aegon the Young Dragon, I believe.
Okay.
They might be the same person. I don't remember.
Split personality.
But yeah, so it's a long, arduous process with Dorne over many, many years.
Okay.
So, all right, well, that's going to bring us to the end of this one. Like I said, our next episode is going to be over. I'll give you the next two here, actually. Next one's going to be over the Wars with Dorne, the chapter Wars of Aegon the First. Then the episode after that will be for the chapter Sons of the Dragon. We're going to talk about Aegon's two sons who will take power after him. All right. Well, make sure you guys come back here next week. Hopefully next week. These chapter by chapters take a little bit longer to go through than just watching an episode of the show and telling you how I feel about it.
We'll just say next time. Come back next time.
Give you guys a little time to read, time to do some research. And on that next episode, we'll be talking about the wars in Dorne. Until that next episode, though, make sure you go over to our Twitter at Is Survived by Productions. Find all the news about our other shows there. We have a show, the Red Right Hand podcast, which is all about the Peaky Blinders. We have a show called The History of the Cores, which is all about different core genres. We're talking music over there. And then, of course, this show, The Throne of the Dragon. You can find all those shows on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, really anywhere that you can find a podcast. We're there. So, anything else? You can check out our TikTok, Is Survived by Productions, my personal Josh the Ghost, personal Twitter at Joshua Lynn Gary. Anything else? Did you cover them all? Is that it?
Plugs, more plugs.
Plugs. Don't forget, guys, if you want to see any kind of streaming for us about anything, games to movies, music, anything, all you got to do is comment stream in the comments. Stream in the comments. See you guys next week.
See ya.